Good afternoon to you, and thank you for joining us. My name is Barry Cribb, and I'm the co-owner and founder of Home and Commercial Hydroponics. There certainly is a great deal to discuss when it comes to hydroponics, but it doesn't have to be difficult. It certainly isn't as complicated as it can sometimes be made out to be. So instead of worrying about every hydroponic system known to man, we can very quickly get you up and running with a productive system that won't break the bank. This video presentation is designed to give you an overview of hydroponic systems in general, how they work, and with enough of an insight to get you started on building or operating your first home-based project. To kick off with then, there are 5 primary issues that we need to have answered in order to progress. The first one, quite simply, is what's the budget? How much money have you got to spend? The second point will be how much space do you have? A lot of people these days are living in inner cities, for example, where you have a very limited amount of space, even as little as just a balcony. But there are systems that will work well on balconies and still provide a good level of production, as well as a great deal of enjoyment for you. The next question will be, what do you want to grow? What type of plants, what type of vegetables are you interested in, and how many plants would you like to grow? That will define the system size, as will the space, obviously. And then how much time have you got available? With anything worthwhile, it's going to take a bit of maintenance, and you will have to spend a few minutes a day, or at least every second day, just keeping an eye on things and making sure the system's behaving as it should be. And the last point will be, do you have the space, the tools and the wherewithal in order to build one of these systems yourself, or will you need to buy a ready-made system? With those questions answered, you can then set about defining the type of system that you're going to employ to meet your objectives and have the best advantage from it. As with most things in life, it's usually better to start small and then grow as you get more experience, get a feel for things, and then you can upgrade as your knowledge and your skills develop. Hydroponics is no different, but it won't take a long time. It's really not as complicated as it's often made out to be, and it's very rewarding. We've done extremely well this year with a small entry-level system of 20 plants, which has been handed over to a crop of brinjals, and they've done extremely well. We've got these beautiful fruits of exceptional quality. Look at the nice shine on that, and the plants here are laden with these things. It's absolutely superb. Failures are very rare. They do occur. You can introduce diseases, particularly if you've bought seedlings from nurseries. Every now and then you can get a disease come through with those, but it's rare. Still more reliable, of course, if you grow your own seedlings. Then you've got full control over the growing environment, and ensure those plants are sterile when they come in. So as a starting system or a starting place, the best way to go would probably be with the leafy greens. So your spinaches and your lettuces, and probably even maybe basil plants, because they're also very prolific. And while they're growing, once your first crop is beginning to mature, you can read and learn and watch some more videos and understand a bit more about the many other hydroponics techniques and methods, and their benefits and advantages, and how that may suit your requirements. So before we start talking about ebb and flow, nutrient film technology, the aeroponic tower type designs and the more complex systems, we just want to get you up and running today with a simple deep water culture of the crack key design based on a mason jar. Now, we provide a kit of parts, including the mason jars and everything else you need, as a set of 3. These are available on our website, and they're ideal to be growing just indoors on a windowsill or whatever, a selection of herbs and maybe some lettuce and even some basil and things like that. That will get you up and running very quickly. They are available on the website. So without further ado, let's move on now. We'll show you how to assemble these things, and then we'll carry on going into the more detailed aspects of the various other techniques in the second part of the video. Thanks very much. Hello again. Hopefully now then you have built your mason jar Kratky deep water culture system and have got some plants growing, and in the time now that those plants take to come to maturity, which will be around about 30 days or so, all being well, we've got the chance now to go on and begin to understand some of the more advanced techniques. But just to recap over what Kratky is, it's a system which requires no active circulation or active oxygenation of the nutrient system. It is dependent entirely upon having an airspace between the base of the stem and the root system before the level of nutrients. So in that gap between the nutrient level and the base of the stem, it can form some air roots which draw oxygen directly from the air as opposed to taking it from the nutrient solution below. It's probably the lowest cost way of getting started. You need no equipment, no pumps, no aerators, and it's very reliable in smaller volumes. There is always a risk of the water becoming stagnant. You do need airflow in that space so that you can exchange that air to make sure it doesn't become stale. But it can be used to various levels of scale. You can do it in a bucket or a tub or a tote of some sort, and certainly put 6 or 8, 10, 12 plants in a reasonable volume of water, and it will work very well. Most commercial systems though take it the one step further, and they use much larger reservoirs but with an active air stone and air pump oxygenation system, rather like a fish tank, to give more oxygen into the water itself. Typically with a Kratky system, the vessel is sized such that you fill the nutrients to whatever level you want in the vessel, and that volume of nutrient should ideally be enough to carry the plant through from its seedling stage all the way through to maturity and harvest. The other important thing to remember with Kratky or any deep water culture system or any hydroponic system for that matter is that you need to try and keep light away from the nutrient reservoir. Because it's so highly charged with nutrients and so rich, it's a very simple matter for algae to form in there. So you need to keep that solution dark and the light away from the roots, and that also helps to keep the nutrient solution cooler, which is also much better and more beneficial for the plant itself. Another advantage of a deep water culture, particularly in the commercial environment, is that with nutrient tanks of some 50 meters, 100 meters long sometimes, and floating rafts, and a reasonable depth of water beneath, it gives you a large volume of water. Thermally, that large volume of water, it becomes much more stable than it would be if it were a small 50 litre, 100 litre tank of some sort. And the ability to have a stable temperature is quite useful. Most plants prefer their root zones to be in the region of around about 20 to 25 degrees, and they're quite happy there. Some plants, the leafy greens in particular, are quite happy to have a little bit cooler temperature, maybe down as low as 15 degrees, between 15 and 20 degrees. And then there are odd plants like the onions and things that can stand slightly hotter temperatures. In fact, they even thrive, I would say, at temperatures just a little above 25. It's 27, 28 degrees, just nudging the 30-degree mark. An active deep water culture is effectively the same as the Kratky deep water culture, except that it includes an air pump or compressor and air stones to help more oxygen be dissolved in the nutrient solution. Much the same as in fish tanks, one uses these little air bubblers to keep the water oxygenated. Active systems are generally larger than the Kratky systems and can accommodate a succession of crops from seedlings all the way through to fully grown plants. But they also require that nutrients be topped up occasionally and that pH be continuously checked. The circular system, pictured in the centre and built in Japan, is particularly interesting. It is fed with seedlings from the centre of the pool, and as the plants grow, they are gradually moved to the outer boundary of the pool by a spiral guide beneath the floats. By the time the plants have completed the full circuit, which takes about 30 days, they're ready to be harvested. So you can see deep water culture systems scale from a single or just a few plants in a small tote size reservoir, as shown in the pictures on the slide, to huge commercial scales with tanks using polystyrene floats typically to support the plants, known as floating raft designs. These systems are easy and relatively inexpensive to build and can cater for a wide variety of plant types. A big advantage of deep water culture system is that they are not at risk, of course, if the air pump should fail for a short period through power outages or a pump fault. This makes them particularly favourable in locations where power supply can be unstable. Small entry-level systems can be built from a tote with holes cut in its lid to support net cups containing either pre-germinated seedlings or even seed themselves planted in rock wall plugs. And active systems lend themselves to succession planting and very large scale production. Good aeration aids the transmission of nutrients through the roots, such that as oxygen levels increase, nutrient absorption levels increase, and the high level of the dissolved O2 assists in keeping the nutrient solution free of anaerobic bacteria, thus reducing the chances of developing root diseases. The larger reservoir sizes, particularly in the commercial systems, also help the nutrient temperature to be stable from a temperature perspective. Smaller systems often experience large fluctuations in temperature, which can be a problem. Many plants will begin to show signs of stress or bolt to seed if their root systems get too hot, and the ideal root temperature range for most plants is in the region of 20 to 25 degrees. The leafy greens prefer something a little bit cooler, maybe down as low as 15 degrees, and as high as 25 to 30 degrees for some onion species. Beyond the 30-degree mark, there's a much greater risk of disease, and generally the plants find it too stressful. Dutch buckets, or Beto buckets as they're sometimes called. This design is effectively a variant of an ebb and flow system which uses buckets instead of trays and is particularly suited to large and vining type plants, tomatoes and cucumbers for example. Peppers also do well in such a system, as do eggplants and squash. They are well suited in a home or commercial environment and can be scaled easily. In a domestic installation, they can be used to grow different crops at the same time, making the system very flexible for the home operator. The beauty of a Dutch bucket arrangement is that it is easy to expand and grow the system to accommodate a greater number of plants. Both ebb and flow and Dutch bucket systems are also less susceptible to power or pump failures, as the substrates or media hold the moisture for a few hours between flooding. Dutch bucket systems can also be supplied by a drip feed system of watering. In a worst case scenario, although labour intensive, the plants can be watered by hand if circumstances should so require. There are several good videos on YouTube of Dutch buckets being used for tomato crops, and with the correct choice of an indeterminate plant being selected, they can be pruned and harvested for an extended period by lowering the vines down as the plant grows and keeping the trusses laden with fruit for a considerable period of time. Many commercial farmers use this method and the technique is well understood. Nutrient film technology, or NFT for short. An NFT system set up inside a tented area under lights is the image most people have, if any, of a hydroponic system. This became synonymous with cannabis production in the days and in the countries where it was illegal to grow the recreational drug and medicinal plant. It was often cultivated entirely under artificial lights and climate control, mostly because of the prohibition and the need to grow it secretly. In an NFT arrangement, the plant is typically held in a net pot, possibly filled with rock wool, and the roots then sit and grow along a flowing shallow film of nutrient solution. This enables the roots access to the nutrients and ample oxygen and allows for a relatively high plant density. Typically set up in rows, it's conducive to be artificially lit to extend the day length and increase the growth rate of the plant to reach the stage where, in the case of cannabis, it can then be selected as a male or female plant and either cultivated and nurtured further or discarded. The ability to control the many factors affecting plant growth is one of the great benefits of hydroponic techniques. The control and manipulation of nutrient concentrations, pH, lighting, ventilation, air and water temperature enable the grower to optimize the conditions for rapid and prolific transition to a harvest. With the looming problem of food security affecting the entire world, the further development, enhancement and understanding of hydroponics is sure to be one of our best opportunities to avert a potential world food crisis. Aeroponics. I'm a big fan of aeroponics as it solves several issues in small-scale systems very effectively, but as you grow to large-scale systems, the risks associated with system failures can become an issue, certainly in Africa. In an aeroponic system, no medium as such is used other than the water. The plant is supported often with a very low density foam or net pots or possibly expanded clay. The roots then hang free inside a chamber and are fed nutrients by a misting spray. This allows good exchange of oxygen and other gases and keeps the roots moist. To my mind, it's a very elegant system that saves space and is suitable for a wide variety of leafy greens. The system has also been used very effectively for certain root vegetables such as potatoes and carrots, although this is somewhat still in its infancy. There is some debate over whether conventional NFT systems produce a better root mass ratio to leaf mass ratio with the leafy greens. But for my money, from a productivity perspective, an aeroponic tower system produces more product per square meter of floor space than an NFT system or a raft deep water culture system does for leafy greens. The trade-off of a slightly lower leaf production to root mass ratio is, in my opinion, outweighed by the leaf production to floor space ratio. There will be certainly a threshold or break-even point, but for me the jury is still out whilst these measurements are being investigated and documented. One particular factor that helps aeroponics work is the cooling effect that a mist or falling spray has on the nutrient temperature, in much the same way as a fountain cools the water in a pond. The cooler nutrient solution helps reduce stress in the plants and the possibility of bolting or even root diseases, particularly in the summer months. As with any hydroponic system, one of the big considerations is of course the continuity of power and the reliability of pumps and aerators. Now this is something you'll have to make your own judgment call on in your specific situation. Obviously, the risk of losing an entire crop to technical failure could be significant, and risk management is a major consideration in any large-scale system. The importance of pH. pH can be an extremely complicated thing if you start talking about hydrogen and hydroxide ions and their charges, etc. But I'm not going to explain anything other than how it affects us with hydroponics and how to measure and control it. Put very simply, pH is a measure of the acidity or alkalinity of a solution. It uses a numeric range from 0 to 14, with a pH of 7 being considered neutral. It is important in hydroponics as the pH of the nutrient solution will affect the availability of elements the plant needs to take up through their roots to allow the plant to grow and produce its leaves and fruits by photosynthesizing these raw chemicals. This diagram tries to show graphically how, if the pH is kept in the range of approximately 6.2 to 6.5, chemical nutrients in the solution are all reasonably well available to the plant. If the pH of the nutrient solution were to drift to, say, 8.2 for example, the plant would then struggle to take up elements such as manganese, boron, copper and zinc. If it should go down to around the 5 to 5.5 range, phosphorus, sulfur, calcium and magnesium would begin to be less available to the plant. So it's important in hydroponics to ensure that all nutrients can be absorbed, including the many so-called micronutrients. But having said this, if you don't have the means to test and adjust the pH level, if you replace the nutrients with a fresh mix at least once a month, the pH should normally stay within an acceptable range to allow the plant to develop, provided you start with a good clean water source. The precise optimum pH range also varies by plant to some degree, with certain species preferring a slightly higher or slightly lower pH than the average. Without the correct pH or the correct concentration of nutrients in your reservoir, you could begin to see certain telltale signs of nutrient deficiency diseases in the plant and experience poor development or failure of the crop. Discolouring of the leaves is a very common symptom. This slide just indicates a few examples of a topic covered in another video of how to identify nutrient deficiencies. This slide shows an example of a magnesium deficiency in a plant. Magnesium is a core component of chlorophyll which you will know from your school days, is the substance that drives photosynthesis and gives plants their green colour. A magnesium deficiency, therefore, is typically characterised by a pale green yellowish coloration of the leaves. Now, whilst this is an entry-level course, we will cover nutrient deficiency in another video and explain the more advanced issues of the subject in full. pH adjustment. If the pH of your nutrient reservoir is not in the desired range, it's a simple matter to add either an acid or an alkaline liquid to the water. There are plenty of commercial products available to do this, and they are typically labelled as either pH up or pH down. Thus, if you want to increase the pH of the reservoir, you would add a small quantity of pH up, which is an alkaline or base substance. Or conversely, if you need to drop the pH, you add a small quantity of pH down, which is an acid-based substance. It is important, however, not to do this too often, as it can make the solution unstable and you may suffer wild swings in pH. Nutrients. There are a huge number of sites on the internet trying to sell hydroponic nutrients. And as with any specialised subject, there are huge differences in opinion, even when there is no commercial ulterior motive or interest. The bottom line is that the product has to provide a range of nutrients in dissolved ion form for the plant to be able to process them and thrive. Most hydroponic nutrients still come in a multi-part soluble powder form or in a ready-made liquid form. The powder products are made into 3 concentrated solutions, which are added to the clean water in the nutrient reservoir as so many milliliters of concentrate per litre of reservoir volume. This enables the grower to provide the best concentrations of the various elements for particular plants and their stage of development, from seedling through to full mature fruit-bearing plant. In a commercial environment, this ability is important from a financial perspective, as it allows the farmer to control his costs and provide the most cost-efficient harvest by selecting the optimum dosage for the crop and its stage of development. EC then stands for electrical conductivity. It enables you to measure the nutrient concentration in the reservoir solution electrically with the use of a EC meter. Knowing this value is useful, since as the plants grow, they obviously deplete the nutrients in the solution, and in order to maintain a good production rate, you will need to feed more. With an EC meter, you can now add more nutrients and measure the increase in the strength of the solution, and therefore maintain it at the required optimum concentration. Without the EC meter, you would have to flush the reservoir and start fresh with a new nutrient calculation once the plants pass the 3rd truss stage, for example, in the case of tomatoes. As with most things in life, it's usually better to start small and then grow as you get more experience, get a feel for things, and then you can upgrade as your knowledge and your skills develop. Hydroponics is no different, but it won't take a long time. It's really not as complicated as it's often made out to be, and it's very rewarding. We've done extremely well this year with a small entry-level system of 20 plants, which has been handed over to a crop of brinjals, and they've done extremely well. We've got these beautiful fruits of exceptional quality. Look at the nice shine on that, and the plants here are laden with these things. It's absolutely superb. Failures are very rare. They do occur. You can introduce diseases, particularly if you've bought seedlings from nurseries. Every now and then you can get a disease come through with those, but it's rare. Still more reliable, of course, if you grow your own seedlings, then you've got full control over the growing environment, and ensure those plants are sterile when they come in. So as a starting system or a starting place, the best way to go would probably be with the leafy greens. So your spinaches and your lettuces, and probably even maybe basil plants, because they're also very prolific. And while they're growing, once your first crop is beginning to mature, you can read and learn and watch some more videos and understand a bit more about the many other hydroponics techniques and methods, and their benefits and advantages, and how that may suit your requirements. In the following series of videos, we will cover the subjects listed here in great detail. This will enable you to design and build your own systems or install commercially made products as either domestic or farm scale projects. You will be capable of identifying nutrient deficiencies and diseases, deliver financially efficient harvests at maximum yield and quality. You will be able to select the right plant characteristics for your projects and be able to operate a hydroponic system year-round in either an indoor fully controlled environment or an outdoor installation in tunnels. We look forward to seeing you again, and thank you for support. We are available to consult on any specific need you may have, and are willing to offer advice on domestic or commercial installations. Thank you again for watching. Goodbye.